shouldn't just be left to general ChatGPT and somebody asking ChatGPT to act like their therapist.
What today, in today's environment, makes a good product team?
I really look for curiosity. I look for people who are interested in the problem. I think there's many tech memes going right now. There is definitely a lot of froth around AI. Is it real? I think it is. To me, it feels like one of those fundamental technology shifts. It feels like when I first held an iPhone in my hand.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Product Lens. Today I am joined by CPO at Uno Bravo, Matt Fenby-Taylor. Why don't you introduce yourself, Matt?
Thanks, good to be here. I'm Matt, CPO at Uno Bravo, which is a mental health and therapy product. Currently in Italy, Spain and France, so effectively based in Europe, growing fast. We're one of the largest mental health providers in Europe. And joined about 9 months ago, starting to really help the company internationalize and start to develop a bit beyond the one-to-one therapy, online therapy. Company that's only about 5 years old, timed sort of what it needed really well around COVID, founded by a therapist who did that classic thing of, damn it, this product doesn't exist, and so I built it myself. And we've built a very interesting company so far, and excited about where we're going to go.
Awesome. Cool. All right. I guess obviously being a CPO, difficult to get to that, right? That journey. It's a long journey. It's a path that a lot of product people ask me about and want to know about. Really high level, what was that journey like for you, getting to that sort of status, that level?
I mean, much like anybody, I think who is successful, you have to recognise there's a huge amount of luck and right place, right time, and all of that sort of stuff. So, I'll put that big disclaimer on it to start off with. Basically, I think the most important thing is to work on the problem in front of you. Focus on what you're good at, what you can solve, what you can do to really make a difference in the space that you're in, wherever that is, and then keep going after the things that interest you next. So when you start to get a little bored, when you start to get a little bit twitchy, use that as a sign to say, either internally or externally, what can I go and do that is going to play to my strengths, is going to stretch me, is going to allow me to make that difference. I think particularly as you get to the senior levels, it's much less about fitting a particular mold. When you get to sort of director, VP, CPO, every company's going to be different. Every company's going to have its own vibe. If you think about the CPO role, you're really going to have to gel with the CEO or the founder or the CTO or whoever that is. And there'll be some opportunities where on paper you tick all the boxes, but you're just not the right fit. And you're just not the right personality, and that's totally fine. So I think it's about just being flexible, being open, being really honest about what makes you tick. What are your principles? What are your values? What do you bring to the table? And being really good at it. And then being very open about where your gaps are. How do you support them? How do you solve for them? And that might be by hiring a great second in command who has that. So as pretty much everybody I've worked with will agree, I'm a bit of a chaos muppet. If you don't know the chaos theory, I'm on the chaos muppet end of the spectrum.
Nothing wrong with that.
Very sort of non-linear thinker, very I think by talking, all that sort of stuff. And so I need a few order muppets around me, and I need a bit of yin to my yang, so to speak. And really understanding that as well, I think is key. But at the end of the day, it's do we love, make a difference, and sort of show that ownership, and the rest of it comes basically. If you chase the goal, that can be difficult. Like, right, promotion, I've got this plan, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's
natural process to an extent.
To some extent, yeah.
I guess one of the topics that you and I talked about briefly beforehand was founder mode. To jump right into that, it's a concept that gets discussed a lot in product. What does it mean to you? How does it influence decision making in a fast-paced environment? Obviously, startup for yourself.
Yep.
What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a hot topic for the last 12 or so months. I don't think there's a product or a design or an engineering meetup I've been at, which it hasn't been a topic. Fundamentally, I think it's identified something, and if you go back and you listen to some of the really original conversations around it, there's a lot in there which I think is absolutely bang on. The superpower of the founder, of having the context, having the ability to just make the decision, having just so many strengths, and the ability for that person to go and work on the biggest problem which the company is facing is key. And I think you can apply that to your senior team, and you should apply that to everybody essentially. Are you able to go and work on the biggest problem that you've got right now? And I think that a lot of the founder mode was triggered by people realizing that in the era of hypergrowth, zero interest rate, applying the textbook of growth to it, of hiring all these layers of middle management, of sort of this mythical, empowered sort of thing, you can lose something. And I don't think you necessarily need to take it to all sorts of extremes. And I think there's some challenges in that which I think you can mitigate. But fundamentally, it's about go and work on the problem.
Yeah.
Like cascading of this thing down, 7 levels of hierarchy is not a good thing. And if a founder, an exec, a VP, whoever, is able to really get in there and get hands-on and solve the thing, then I think that's a good thing. Now,
where's the caveat?
Exactly. Micromanagement.
Of course.
Disempowerment. Delivery orientation. Doing things with hippo decisions, and basically meaning that you don't get everybody to bring their best to the table. I am still a firm believer that everybody has something to add, and that you should only hire people whose opinions you value. That's the point of bringing them into your organisation. So it shouldn't be micromanagement. We shouldn't go to like a delivery orientation, and I'm not advocating everybody implement safe frameworks and all this sort of stuff, but very much that we're going to run with it together, and we're going to work on it together. And success is not ticking boxes or following a process, and whatever that process tells me is the right answer is the right answer. Success is getting shit done.
Outcome.
It's having an impact.
Yeah.
It's making, particularly for product people, do you solve your user problems? How do you solve it? Do you solve it in a viable way that allows the business to grow? Do you, and that's the thing that should be focused on, not like all these intermediary things which sort of tended to appear. So, it's the right refocus, in my opinion.
How do you balance gut reactions and instinct with a deeper understanding of why things happen and what truly matters?
I think it's always a balance. First of all, you've got to think about and understand the people that you're working with. What is it that you might have in terms of context or experience or just opinion that you share? I think something that I've learned, particularly with sort of like my chaos muppet mentality, is that just talking about ideas, throwing ideas around and sort of riffing on them can be great with some people. With others, it can absolutely spin them out, and they can then go and question absolutely everything that they were doing.
That's really interesting.
Because I'd suggested some idea which wasn't what they'd been
threw them off.
About. Exactly, totally threw them off.
Yeah.
So I think really understanding what that team dynamic is and trying to match your approach to the team situation. I think once you understand that, it's really about giving as much context as possible and being very, very clear about when is this opinion, when is this even less. It's just context. It's like, look, you need to understand this. You need to understand this background. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. This is hypothesis. This isn't, this is whatever. All the way through to sometimes you do need a little bit of JFDI. Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
You don't need to second guess. You don't need to go out and do a whole bunch of research to understand this. We should be confident enough that we can just do this thing because of whatever. That might be lived experience. That might be endlessly talking to users every week and just getting that deep understanding about and that empathy for what's going on. You might be looking at your competitors or other products and going, look, this is the pattern. this is what works, and therefore we are going to take that approach. We're going to make it great, we're going to make it ours, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. So I think positioning that in the right way and understanding where you're at, what stage you're at, what stage is the team at, what do you actually need to do? Is this a sort of crazy emergency and it's just a very clear thing of we've just got to do this thing, everybody, here's why, but we're just going to go and do it. And I think that clarity, that specificity is important.
Comes back to hiring the right people and people you trust, right?
Right people, the right thing at the right time, which is so easy to say, so hard to do. And a lot of that comes from lived experience and fucking up lots and going from there and trying to be better. I think if you have that positive intent, and hopefully your team understands that positive intent from each other, from you, from everybody else, and then you come at it with this, at the end of the day, growth mindset of we're going to do the best that we can do with the information that we have available, and if we get it wrong, we'll get better next time. And take that approach.
Part of the process.
Yeah, part of the process.
Absolutely. And then a topic that I'm probably most excited about, really interested to hear your thoughts on it, is sort of AI in regulated spaces. Obviously, Uno Bravo, being in the health space, is highly regulated. What's your guys' approach? What's your perspective? What unique challenges do you face? What does it all look like?
I'm super excited and in equal sort of measure cautious. The level of efficacy which we must have as we go through this is very self-evident. It's one of our core values. It's something that Uno Bravo takes very seriously, and I'd hope that even if it wasn't, any product team of mine would really be thinking about the efficacy of this. How do we do no harm? How do we make sure that what we are doing is safe? And what do we do? And at some point, we will get to medical instrument level. So where do you get to a point where this is actually clinical and isn't just a tool to support what is going on? And I'm very excited about that. And I hope that both in the UK, in the EU, but around the world, AI legislation allows the ability to innovate in this space, because I think the potential is very high. If you think about it from a number of angles. So generative AI relates to big change. It's about interpreting language and then being able to respond to it from a model, from what it's been trained on. What Uno Bravo fundamentally does is talking therapy, and you can see a lot of long-term potential for that to be able to support therapists, for instance, to be able to help them pick up things that maybe they missed in the therapy session, to be able to very quickly summarize, very quickly help, very quickly support, maybe train. There's all sorts of things there. But I think at some point we're going to cross that boundary in terms of medical instruments, and I think that we're going to be. I want Uno Bravo to be understanding where that is and being at the forefront of doing it in the right way. There's a bunch of people out there who are launching stuff which is very much startup land, very few patients, very few whatever. We're delivering 2.5 million therapy sessions a year. We have a very big responsibility to our patients and to our therapists to do this in the right way. All of that said, I think it's super exciting because it will allow us to do things in a way that I think you're just so limited by the current context, the current human setup of this whole space today. So I think the flip side of that is there's a lot of upside. So if you think about all the different tools which we can use to support the patient, to support the therapist. So let's say you're talking to your therapist on a regular basis. How do we support you in between those therapy sessions? You probably aren't going to be able to afford to have a therapist talking to you, reminding you of all the things
24/7.
you do 24/7. Yeah. So what are those things in between it? How do we support you in a very similar way to what you would get in a personalised one-on-one sort of therapy setting?
Presumably that human element's the important part, right? Still making the AI feel like you're talking to a human and not robot, human.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so that trust factor, that you don't want to be in the uncanny valley, you want to be super clear who you're talking to, what you're talking to them about, and that therapeutic alliance that you have with the fellow human who is your therapist is key. we don't want to step into that. We don't want to break that. What we want to do is support that. So what are the tools, what are the support methods that we give to you to empower that, to deepen the trust, to allow you to apply the things that you've discussed and agreed with your therapist? How do we remind you? How do we help with those little nudges through the day, or whatever it might be? I think a lot of that is all going to become possible in this space because of use of AI, which is those aren't medical instruments, but I think they are very interesting, positive, adjacent tools which will help make the entire thing better.
It'd be really interesting to see how that unfolds. It's different, obviously, but there's similar crossover in sort of the recruitment space, where as AI recruitment platforms get better and better, it's removing that human element. It's a really hot topic in the recruitment space as well. We've had some product design leaders here before for big events, and it's been one of the main topics we've talked about, is that recruitment is so vital to have some sort of human element, some human interaction. Remove that and it feels automated. You don't really get a connection with individuals through the process, and it's a very different process for people. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you push it to its logical extreme with the current state of the art, if you stop having humans sort of giving therapy, the model stops learning. The
Exactly.
model stops getting better.
Yeah.
And so suddenly you're just in this loop of, you're just talking to a whole bunch of other conversations that have already happened, and like extracting of the best of them. So yeah, the human will always be in the loop. The human will always be the best person to do these things. But the flip side is that people are giving a break to it too. If you look at the roles, the typical roles, which like the mass market generative AI products out there, like your Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, people are asking them to perform the role of a therapist. There is a level of acceptance and anticipation of that, and I think the industry ignores that at our peril. People are saying that, at least some people are saying they're comfortable with that. Do they understand the risks?
Dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? There's
Really
there's
dangerous.
all sorts of downsides to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's on us to figure out how this is done properly.
Ultimately regulate the space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be left to general ChatGPT and somebody asking ChatGPT to act like their therapist. They need to be given the right alternative in something that they trust, that they know is regulated, that is clinically proven to do them good. That's what we need to get to.
Interpreting words as well versus a conversation is like a verbal conversation is a very different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes down to, in the future, I'm sure it will come down to body language interpretation. It will come down to nuances. It will come down to changes over time. And I think there's a lot of AI support which you can give to humans in that situation, rather than completely come out of the loop.
Yeah, be a really interesting topic that over the next 5-10 years, as AI continually advances.
Yeah, it really will be.
Yeah.
And I want us to be at the forefront of that. It's so important that you have proper medical companies, proper technology companies who really also commit to the healthcare space, who are going after this.
Yeah,
that's key.
For sure. I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to say about this, but we obviously spoke about an upcoming product launch, Q1, at Uno Bravo. Can we get a sneak peek into what's coming? Any thoughts behind it?
Yeah, so it's our first step, so it should be out by the time you listen to this. So I'm not spilling the beans too much, but we'll be launching our first therapy support product. So what we'll be doing is transcribing the therapy session using AI to summarize it and provide sort of key attributes and important pieces of information back to the therapist. So we're very much thinking about consent, data privacy here. So it's like a double opt-in. The patient and the therapist both have to opt in. We keep the data temporarily. We've got very clear privacy and security aspects around it. That data is not going to be used and just thrown into ChatGPT for them to train their models with or anything like that. We're being very conscious of that. What we want to do is take that first step and provide value back to our therapists so that they can focus on the therapy, not on note-taking. They can focus on preparing for the therapy session by quickly summarising and reviewing where they're at, rather than scrabbling through a bunch of handwritten notes from 2 weeks ago or whatever it might be. And so we want to get that out there. I think from that, there's then a lot that we can do in terms of, okay, how do we build on that? How do we use that summary to then ... So it's our first step. Should be out by the time you listen to this.
Very exciting.
Looking forward to hearing what therapists think about.
Yeah, for sure. Something a lot of product people have spoken to about. Just a general topic that, has come up in conversation a lot, especially at sort of startup, scale-up level, is that international expansion piece.
Yes.
Obviously, Bravo's operating in a few European countries at the moment. What does that international expansion look like? What are some of the key challenges associated with it?
I've done international expansion at 4 marketplaces now, 4 consumer-facing marketplaces, and one thing is clear is that each one is different. So if I think about a product like Skyscanner, from a product point of view, it's quite directly internationalizable. You can basically take the entire product dynamic, as long as you connect the supply in and you localize it, you get your culture settings right, all of this sort of stuff, and you have the ability for somebody to search for and book their travel, whether that be a flight or a hotel, in that new market, you're good to go. But the dynamic is basically saying you've got some supply side differences, but that's it. Whereas if I think about Una Bravo, therapy and what the expectations of therapy are, and the level of mental health openness or stigma or lack of, varies wildly market to market. So just what is expected by the patient is different in every market.
No one size fits all
No
approach.
one size fits all. So I think that the core of the product, it is, let's match you to the right therapists, let's help you schedule, set it up, facilitate the video call, support the therapist with all the admin and tax payments and invoicing and all that sort of stuff. That's transferable. But when I say match the patient to the right therapist, what does that mean in Spain versus in Italy?
Yeah.
When an Italian types in to our sign-up flow, this is how I'm feeling, this is what it's about, versus what a Spaniard types in, quite different.
Massive cultural differences.
Very different.
Yeah.
Very different cultural differences.
Yeah.
And finding the right thing there is key. So it's not a case of just copy, rinse and repeat. Let's just go find therapists in France and launch France. Let's find therapists in the UK, launching in the UK. You can't just take that direct approach. So I think it's incumbent on us as product people to really get under the skin of that and start to understand that. You've got a number of ways you can do that. You can start with desk research. You can get into it, but nothing really beats launching it and talking to your customers as you go there.
Yeah,
so how you balance that, the cost of doing that, when you pull the trigger. Obviously, you need to understand the market dynamic and whether you think the core sort of attributes in the market are there, is the demand there, is the supply there, all of those things. You've got to make sure you've done your homework on that. But there's so much that comes out after you launch that you just didn't expect, you don't understand. You've got to get in there, you've got to figure it out, and you go from there. So it's a very different thing. And then of course you've got all the localization, all the culture settings, understanding all that, but that's sort of like the table stakes. But particularly for marketplaces, understanding what does the demand actually want, and is it the same, is it different, how does it change? Something that's, I think, deep and human as mental health and therapy.
Super important. Got to get it right? As well.
Get it right. I mean, to solve our user problem, you've got to get it right.
Yeah. How does it compare to something like ClearScore or fintech in general? Like, how does it compare?
The interesting thing is there's so many transferable skills. I'd say whether you're an engineer, a PM, a designer, anything, the level of transferable skills about what makes you good and successful at a particular type of company, I think will apply pretty universally between all the different markets. And there are commonalities. So for instance, both Clearscore and Bravo are operating regulated industries where there is differences in what it's called and the approach and what it actually means, of course. But you've got Consumer Duty, for instance, in the UK, which is very much focusing you in a regulated space on doing the right thing by the consumer. And you've got all of the quite obvious Hippocratic and ontological requirements of operating in a regulated healthcare space, and that just understanding the importance of regulation and the ability to understand it, translate it, and work with it is the same across. If you've got that real curiosity about your users, if you've got that high level of ownership, and I'm just going to go and fix this stuff, and that drive, that's going to be highly applicable. What you do need crossing between industries is that ability to learn quickly about the subject matter expertise. And I think to be able to do that, you've got to have that mindset of I know nothing. I'm going to have to learn this from scratch. Don't assume anything. But if you apply your mindset, if you apply your skill set to it, and you come in with that openness, I think you're in a good space.
Nice. And we talked about this very briefly before the cameras were on. And obviously, as a product leader, you've scaled teams, you've built teams, you've worked in probably a number of different environments and functions and operated in very different ways depending on who's in your team, etc. But what in today's environment, makes a good product team, especially post sort of 0% interest rates, etc.?
I really look for curiosity. I look for people who are interested in the problem, not just in the solution, not just interested in building something, but they're interested in the problems. They are builders in the sort of true sense of the word, in the whole sense of the word of, that frustrates me. The world needs to fix this thing. I'm going to build the solution to that thing. And that ability to understand, did it work, iterate on it, keep going at it until you get it right, until you fix it. And that sort of resilience, ownership, sort of real builders who want to get in there and solve the problem. I think the core change is, I think that sort of like management approach of sort of cascading and that sort of stuff is rightly less so that we need people who are going to get hands-on at every level, who are going to go in and solve that problem with the team, not micromanaging, not all those sorts of things. So that's absolutely key. I think another big piece, which is just, thank God this has really changed, is from the board level down, the importance of the fundamental unit economics of the business is now a big focus. And if you are the most junior PM or the most junior designer or the most junior engineer in a team, and you aren't thinking about unit economics, at least somehow, some way, and you're not understanding that this is important because no money, no mission. You can be the most mission-led company in the world, but you're not an NGO, you're not a charity. Without the money, there is no mission. So understand unit economics. Understand what your CAC is. Understand what your LTV is. Know why the ratio of those two things is important. And even if you don't know exactly yourself, ask the question, how does what I'm working on affect these things?
Yeah.
And hopefully somebody can give you an answer. If they can't,
you got a problem.
You got a problem.
Yeah.
Go find out. Go find somebody who can. But that from the individual team members all the way up, that is much more of a focus now. Like the hyper growth, super high growth, low retention, something profit is those days are gone. There's much more focus on the core unit economics, much more sensible capital moving around, and I think that's good because that's how you build resilient businesses that change the world. That's how you do things that will really scale, that will really make a difference, that will be there for a long, long time. And that's why most of us do it. We want to leave our dent on the world. We want to make it a better place. We want to change it. We want to see things to be different. And fundamentally, that's how you do it.
One other thing, I guess, final topic to touch on. From your perspective, what are boards, exec teams most concerned about right now? Why are these priorities shifting, and how does this impact product teams and strategy overall?
I think in the last 2 years, very much that shift to fundamentals of the business, those unit economics. Infinite money train, as I think a few people coined it, is over.
Yeah.
And people are much more focused on what are those core milestones, what are those leading indicators that we're on the path to what we're doing, what is backing up that investment thesis, that investment hypothesis, and how are we doing that. But it doesn't mean that if you miss it, you're screwed, and it's not like a crazy thing, but it is the focus on the fundamentals of what are unit economics, what are the assumptions that back this up, how do we learn how we're getting there. And that might be sort of early stage stuff of can we show product market fit, can we show a great Sean Ellis score that shows that people are really into it, even before you figure the whole thing out. But sort of like the whole build it and they will come, or thinking about monetization is a dirty word, and let's just ship value and somehow magically things will happen. That's done. So I think there's still a lot of desire and appetite for the innovation, for trying to change the world in a positive way, build great businesses of the future, all of that sort of stuff. I think it's just the reality of you've got to build a great business to do that. And growth is only one side of that. And hyper-growth comes at its cost. I think there is a lot more focus now on sort of company scale, operational leverage, like the number of layers of management, team size. Again, rightly so. That's what boards, that's what investors should be sort of holding the management team's feet to the fire on, and making sure that they are spending the money wisely and that it is well thought out. I think as many a tech meme is going right now, there is definitely a lot of froth around AI. Is it real? I think it is. To me, it feels like one of those fundamental technology shifts. It feels like when I first held an iPhone in my hand, I'm like, fuck, this changes.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, and it does feel like one of those things to me. So I don't think this is like NFTs or something like that. But there is still a lot of froth out there. So you see a lot of pitch decks which are something AI ? Yeah, and it's almost like the what was the meme in the last cycle? Uber for ...
Yeah.
Now it's AI for ...
Well, every company's trying their best to integrate it in some way or another,
exactly.
right?
Keep yourself honest to what you can do. I'm sure almost every company will have some implementation of it, which will be useful. But if that's just on reducing your costs, getting better, empowering your engineers to do way more using Copilot, or whatever those things are, creating prototypes much faster from sketches of paper and using any one of the things, or using something for content creation or copy or whatever. Absolutely, fill your boots. You should absolutely be doing that. If you're not doing that, you're
again doing something wrong. Yeah.
I think as product people, if you're not using AI every day, you're probably being left behind.
It's the same as recruitment.
Yeah.
It's saving me hours every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it will allow you to do more. And the core thing is, it's not replacing you, it's allowing you to do more of what you should be doing, which is that fundamental human creativity, that fundamental problem solving. Not grooming a backlog or creating
the human element,
massive great big document or whatever. Automate that shit.
Yeah.
Focus on what those unique things, what are those skills that you bring to it. I think the same applies at a company strategy point of view. This whole we've got to get AI in there, we've got to be able to tell the board or tell shareholders or tell somebody we've integrated AI. You're probably doing it wrong if that's the thing. And there's a bit of that, but equally, I think there's so much exciting stuff that you can do with it. So just come at it from first principles. Get creative about it. Think, carve out some space. Think about how your product, your industry, the world changes when you apply a technology like it.
Awesome. Well, look, Matt, thank you so much for joining. Really insightful.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, really good to have you, and really looking forward to seeing what 2025 and onwards holds for InterBravo and yourself.
Me too.
Awesome, mate. Cheers.